Howdy. Welcome to school. Let's do lesson 1 of module 2.3. Let's rock and roll. All right, so what we got here is multiplication and division. We're going to figure out how to solve inequalities using multiplication and division. So first, we're going to talk about when the number that we're multiplying by is positive, greater than 0. The multiplication and division properties of inequality. There's one for each, the multiplication property of inequality and the division property of inequality, but they basically say that you can multiply both sides of an inequality by the same number, and you can divide both sides of an inequality by the same number, and you get an equivalent inequality as long as you're multiplying or dividing by a positive number. So let's try this. Here is an inequality. -6 is less than 8. Well, what if we multiply both sides by the same number? Let's multiply both sides by 2. I get -12 is less than 16. That's true. That's an equivalent inequality. With greater than, 6 is greater than -8. Hey, that's true. Let's divide both sides by 2 and see what happens. 6 divided by 2 is 3. -8 divided by 2 is -4, and 3 is greater than -4. So we get an equivalent inequality. In algebraic symbology, if you have an inequality and you multiply by the same positive number, then you get an equivalent inequality. Same thing with dividing. And it works with greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. You can multiply both sides, you can divide both sides by the same positive number, and you get an equivalent inequality. So let us look at a couple of examples. How are we going to use this wonderful property that we just learned about? Let's take a look at x over 8 is greater than -5. All right, well, x over 8, that means x divided by 8. So if I wanted to get x by itself, I would have to do the opposite of dividing by 8, which is multiplying by 8. So I would love to multiply both sides by 8. But am I allowed to do that? Yes, because of the multiplication property of inequality. It says and 8 is positive, so I'm just going to get an equivalent inequality with the same sign. 8 divided by 8 is 1, so I just have x over here. -5 times 8 is -40. So the solution to this inequality is x greater than -40. So let's graph that feller. Here's a number line with -40 on it. And let's see, greater than but not equal to. So that is an open circle. And then greater than is the numbers that are to the right of that dude. So there is our super neat and pretty graph. All right, let's solve this one here. My variable's over here. It's being multiplied by 3. So I need to do the opposite of multiplying by 3. I need to divide by 3. And the division property of inequality says I can divide both sides of an inequality by the same positive number, and I get an equivalent inequality with the same inequality sign. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is x. -24 divided by 3 is -8. All right, so -8 is greater than or equal to x, and that means that x is less than or equal to -8. I usually like to put the variable first when I'm graphing because then the inequality sign points in the direction that my arrow is going to be going. So x is less than or equal to -8. So here's -8. I need the numbers that are less than -8. And then the line under says also it can be equal to -8. So then I fill in me circle to show that -8 counts, that -8 is a solution. Over here, negative 40 is not a solution, so I have to leave this empty. Because negative 40 is not greater than negative 40. It just isn't, and it never will be. It's got a glass ceiling. All right, one more. N divided by 7 is greater than or equal to negative 1. Divided by 7, let's see, I guess I'm going to have to multiply by 7. All right, so that gives me N is greater than or equal to negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. And then I'm going to graph that guy. Here's negative 7. I want the numbers that are greater than negative 7. It can also be equal to negative 7, so I fill that circle in. And that's lesson 1. And it was so much fun. But you don't have to take my word for it. LeBron James was loving it too. Yeah. What? Yeah. Algebra. Woo!